Hi YouTube, I'm Kay Carmichael. I'm a storyboard artist and a story teacher. And today I'm going to show you how to draw a very simple figure for your storyboards that is accurate in all the ways that matter. i.e., it allows you to see where you are placing figures, how far away from frame, how far away from each other, and it helps you gauge the kind of story that's being told with some degree of accuracy without the need to study anatomy for the rest of your life. So humans are really kind of our main sort of contact point. Most people are very scared of drawing people. The main thing I've heard as an artist throughout my life is, oh, that's amazing, I can't even draw a stick figure, which is often this little Y-shaped, upside down Y-shaped dude with two little sticks coming out the side. And very basic kind of like smiley face looking thing there. What I think most people mean there is like they don't know how to manipulate a stick figure. What I'm going to show you is basically kind of a volumetric stick figure, which is the star person. So if we think of like a little 5-pointed star figure like that, a star person is essentially just 4 of those points with a bit of a neck. You could think of the 5th point as a bit of a neck and then a bit of a soccer ball head. This has nothing to do with proportionality. This has nothing to do with anatomy necessarily. This is just an approachable way to draw a person. And the star person is great. It's a way to kind of manipulate the human figure without having to worry about the anatomy too much. And it's a way to begin to think about anatomy as gesture, as communication, as, as like what do the poses indicate to us. Kind of a very basic star-like shape, and then stick a ball on the head, on the top of it. The ball is has some very specific choices as well. For one, it's just round, and 2, it has a bit of a crisscross along it. And the crisscross is extremely useful because the crisscross is directional. If you get good at drawing a crisscross along a ball shape with these kind of volumetric, you can see how I'm kind of using a volumetric line across there to indicate a ball shape with it. It takes a little practice, but you can get used to it fairly quickly. That is super useful in the sense that it follows, if we think of that sort of cross, the horizontal cross shape there as an eye line, you can kind of see where it becomes super useful in terms of just being able to show our character looking back and forth. Some people might kind of look at this and think, well, there's not much expression going on there. There's not much anything going on there. Au contraire, there's a ton of expression that could be possible with just a little stick figure. Those people are also often ignoring the fact that much of what we think of as acting, much of what we think of as human physicality and communication is just us looking places. It's really just us looking around at places, just making our hands do things, making our arms kind of do things, making our bodies sort of lean over somewhere, making very little gestures kind of happen, where the body itself is a bigger tool for expression. The hands themselves are tools for expression. Even the feet can be tools for expression. But what we're doing here is really just playing with poses before we start getting into things that hands might do. So I really encourage you just to kind of take your star person. Like once you're kind of comfortable with doing a standing star person like this, maybe start to bend them over a little bit. Maybe make him touch his toes somewhat. Maybe make him look up the sky, point to something in the heavens. Maybe make him lie flat and look at a butterfly or something. Like kick his legs a little bit. How we might do. And if you're kind of like, well, this, what about this weird flat pancake looking thing? Like my shoulders are wrong, my elbows are wrong, my everything is wrong. It's like, that's fine. I don't care. What I'm more worried about is whether I can overall tell what we call a silhouette is doing. Silhouette kind of being, if we had to darken this entire shape over here, which I'm just going to do now. If I had to black out this entire shape, could I still tell what that character is doing? Does this read? This might not read all that much because my silhouette kind of covers up what the one hand is doing. I'd actually have to probably pick it out
with an opposite color there in order to tell what that character is doing, or to be able to tell which way the head is moving, because like over here the head could be looking up there, you don't know. I would have to actually pick it out in like an opposite color to be able to tell where that character is moving to. So my silhouette isn't too healthy over there, but I can fix that pretty easily. I could just turn the character a little bit, like make him, maybe make those arms stand proud of the body base over here, and just make those arms, pull those arms over a little bit, and that makes that silhouette that much clearer. So once you kind of got comfortable with actually just drawing the figure, try and maybe doing a few gestures and so on, try like sort of simple standing gestures or something. Those gestures where it's like maybe like what I'm saying is like try get the character to do stuff before you start adding hands and facial expressions. Try and keep your drawings extremely small, where just get the pose kind of working before you go any further or any closer in there. That's always a good place to kind of start, because a lot of us sort of think that, well, how we think about drawing detail is we think that our drawings will be better if only we could add detail, where really a lot of what you learn in terms of drawing fundamentals is that the drawings themselves, the very basic drawing itself, needs to be solid before you can go in with more detail. More detail rarely helps a badly structured drawing. So kind of trying to get like communicative, I don't know, let's try a fresh page. I'm struggling for space here. Trying to get a very communicative sketch. You might like just work through your way through all the primary kind of emotions, where can you make a character look like they're pleading, for example, before you've even added any expression there? Can you make a character look like they're in despair before you've added any expression there? Can you play with your line of action more or less, just to show us like some strength in the thing? If he's throwing something, like, is he really throwing that with his whole body? What I mean by line of action, of course, is this. Where is my thing? Nope, that's not the one I was looking for. What I mean by line of action is I mean the strong line that kind of goes through, or the strong line. Usually it's the spine, but not always. Sometimes the head and feet can be part of that big sort of central arc throughout the body. But yeah, this is a great way to very basically practice without the use of any anatomical reference. You can of course go for anatomical reference, nobody's stopping you, but if you just want to sort of practice like some primary color emotions, like really basic kind of like shock, horror, anger. What would an angry guy look like, I wonder? Actually, like we've got a couple of quite a lot of like big emotions that are happening here, but what would an angry person look like? I think he would try and make himself look big, like, it's hard to like, it's actually a bit of a challenge to, I think he's sort of moving forward, and like maybe the fistful. You see, like I'm already putting in hand gestures. I'm already putting in hand gestures that I really want to put in like elbow gestures, and like, put in a facial expression and something. But like, or maybe if I went to a little bit closer or something, it would be like a character who's like leaned forward like that. This looks like a more disapproving sort of person, And again, I'd be wondering, like, would he be like holding a fist there, or would he be saying no with a hand, or like what would those extra little gestures kind of look like? Is he Despair is actually so much easier to show in a body, really, than like anger. Anger often has like a lot of extra words and a lot of extra communication and a lot of extra like subtext kind of going on. Despair tends to be pretty straightforward, because it's often your body. Like, think people who are truly despairing, like their bodies are talking for them because they can't talk at that moment, or they very rarely can talk. Like there's if you're despairing or grieving or something, it's usually your body that's doing the talking. You're not really like, there's no words that you could say if you're truly grieving about something.
Georgie interrupts this broadcast for a quick appearance.
I prefer gesture and looseness, and I prefer to some degree to treat my characters just like they're a little bit more anonymous, really. Like not anonymous exactly, but they're very like interchangeable. I don't clasp onto any particular kind of character all that much. Maybe it's just from years of being a storyboard artist where you've got to be fairly fluid about what kind of characters you can draw. I do see a lot of students who have a very specific, like they can draw that kind of body type and that kind of hair, and that's that. That's about it. I got that knocked out pretty early on in the industry here in South Africa. So because I was doing mostly service work. We had to just be able to draw any type of thing, any type of character. Sometimes there was kind of like a studio style that we had to kind of meet. But yeah, anyway. Another like very, very just a little basic thing about anatomy that I see a lot of people kind of get wrong sometimes. Not wrong, but it's obvious when it's not done. And I think I didn't do it here, is that the bottom of the groin line is a technical halfway point. Not for everybody. Some people have much shorter legs than others. But if you kind of want to make sure that the legs are long enough, and this is once you sort of start getting comfortable enough with your star person, or you have to start cleaning up and you're not focusing on gesture, but you're focusing on cleanup and making this thing look better. You're starting to add details and so on. Bottom of the groin line is a rough halfway point for the character to the bottom of the feet and the bottom of the head. And you can see already there, that is much longer than that. So if I wanted to correct this, I would grab the bottom of the legs and make them roughly imitate the top half to get long enough legs for this character. So if I sort of measure that and measure that, it's still not perfect, but it's not as bad. So maybe I would take this down a little bit. You can go with like the 7 heads or 8 head height, whatever the Andrew Loomis thing is. I don't really, I'm not gonna call the principal on you. But yeah, that's a way of kind of making sure that your posture and your position and your proportionality looks semi realistic. When you're doing child characters, I will say, like I find myself kind of drawing. If I draw kids, for example, and I'm doing your sort of young adult comics and stuff at the moment, the head tends to be much larger than the rest of the body, and the shoulders and stuff. With adults, the shoulders tend to be broad. They go beyond the scope of the head there. With kids, if I want to indicate like a 10-year-old's frame or something, I tend to try and make them quite small and not beyond the scope of the shoulders. Maybe the ears stick out a little bit or something, and the eyes are usually like really big. But that's kind of where you have to be pretty careful. Maybe the only time you have to be super careful with proportions is if you're trying to like consistently draw a character that's supposed to be 10, and then giving them even a very slightly smaller head or even a very slightly broader shoulders, or changing the proportions of like the torso to the legs or something, will instantly age them up a couple of years or down a couple of years. So you have to be fairly, once you pick something that works for you and you're like, cool, this is my 10-year-old character, you have to be fairly strict and stick with that.